So Avatar versus Nightbringer versus Swarmlord then? It feels like a weird version of 40k rock, paper, scissors, but let's find out who would win in a fight. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I thought we'd do a short part 2 to our Avatar versus Faction Commanders video, which came out around the other week. In that video we basically pitted the Avatar of Khaine versus every single faction commander. The Avatar did come out on top against the vast majority of them, only 4 commanders managed to best him, and in fact only one of them, Mortarion, managed to win on a per point basis. There were just a couple of more fights that you guys wanted to see down in the comments though, and that was whether or not the Avatar could take on the Nightbringer. The Silent King didn't fare too badly against the Avatar, but the Nightbringer really does feel like an equivalent of the Avatar for the Necrons, basically a splinter of their god-made manifest, and would be quite an interesting prospect for the Avatar to kill. We also made use of the previous version of the Swarmlord's rules in the last video, and now he's got a tasty new leaked datasheet. I thought it would be really quite interesting to put the upgraded Swarmlord in the ring against the Avatar, as the previous version just didn't square up too well against the God of War. As per the previous contest, each contestant will get the chance to make a psychic phase, shooting phase, and combat phase, all assumed to be fought simultaneously, and the one who can deal the most percentage damage to the enemy is the one who wins the contest. Just a bit of fun to hypothetically think who might win in a straight fight. First up, I thought we'd go for Avatar vs Nightbringer, and to meet our contestants, the Avatar is a 270 point HQ choice for Codex Eldar. It's really tough at toughness 8, 14 wounds and a 2+ save with a 4+ invul, halves incoming damage which is really powerful against big damage weapons, and then attacks with a blistering damage d6+2 weapons with his Wailing Doom, getting a single shot in shooting, and then 7 more attacks at strength 14, AP-5 in combat, so the potential for some ridiculous damage there. The Nightbringer on the other hand really does have a very different feel to the Avatar. This enslaved star god is really tough to shift in any one turn. He can basically take no more than 3 wounds in any one phase, making him particularly good at dueling characters, ones who aren't likely to be able to shoot him well and then also follow up in melee. He does only have 9 wounds, toughness 7 and a 4+ invul though, so it does mean that there's reasonable chance of you getting the wounds through against him. But his offensive damage is also incredibly scary, throwing out a bunch of mortal wounds through Catan powers, and then following up with a whole bunch of strength 14 AP-4 damage d6 attacks that ignore invul saves. This thing is basically a straight up character killer, and I think is always going to perform well in these death matches. Definitely a worthy adversary there. When the Avatar attacks, the Wailing Doom does on average 0.8 wounds. It basically will shake out to be either 3 or nothing, but accounting for the chance of it missing, failing to wound, or the Nightbringer passing its save, that's what it would equate to on a turn-on-turn average. In melee, the Avatar is almost guaranteed to get the full 3 wounds. There's a tiny chance of it rolling super low, then the Nightbringer's passing a whole bunch of 4+ invuls. It averages out to about 2.9 wounds, giving the Avatar a total of 3.7 out of 9, equating to 41% damage. The Nightbringer really does strike back pretty hard though. The Catan powers are exactly what you want for fighting the Avatar. Gaze of Death and Antimatter Meteor really do put out a whole bunch of mortal wounds, great for getting around that tough save and also ignoring the half damage mechanic. And then when the scythe gets to work, it averages around 7 wounds. Ignoring invuls is a really big deal on this thing, though its damage potential is limited by the Avatar halving it. Overall though, it adds up to a win for the Nightbringer, 12.2 wounds out of 14 for the Avatar, or 87% damage. And even if you account for points, the Nightbringer does come out ahead still, the Avatar costing 270 and the Nightbringer 370. The Nightbringer also regains a wound after all of this has gone on as well, giving him yet another advantage. It does seem that the Nightbringer is on the same lofty heights as Mortarion, as a great character killer that can actually take out the Avatar, and is more efficient in combat against it in a straight fight. Next up, we'll see how the Avatar gets along against the new Swarmlord. This leaked datasheet is coming from the new Tyranid Codex that's been going around the internet, and compared with the previous model, we're seeing some pretty vast updates here. It's gone up to toughness 8 and 13 wounds, a 2+ armor save, and retains its 4+ invul. The 3+ invul save in combat, however, has been swapped out for a blade parry rule. It basically allows you to ignore 1 failed save per attack in combat, and actually against the Avatar that is a really punishing rule, as it's going to stop an attack that could basically be anywhere up to 8 damage in one fell swing. On the offensive, he has psychic powers plus his bone sabers. They strike at a very nice 9 attacks at strength 9, AP-4 and damage 3. A pretty blistering hail of melee there. There's very little in the game that wants to be in the way of that. Getting into the fight then, and the Wailing Doom strikes first. The Swarmlord does try and cast Catalyst on itself first, and for the chance of that success, it does lessen the Wailing Doom's impact a bit. We get 1.2 wounds from the shooting and 4 wounds in the melee. In particular, that blade parry rule in combination with the invul save really hurts the Avatar in melee. He'd have almost double the damage compared with this if the Swarmlord didn't have it. Overall, it stacks up to 5.2 wounds out of 13, so 40% damage to the Swarmlord. In return, the Swarmlord attempts to cast Catalyst, which we've already counted for in the Avatar's attacks. Then Smite seemed to be the next best bet. It does seem a bit more efficient than making the Avatar's attacks -1 to wounds. Then in melee, with that crazy hail of bone sabers, it averages about 6 wounds to the Avatar, accounting for the half damage, leaving a total of 7.6 wounds of 14, 54% damage beating 40, and the Swarmlord wins this fight. That's really pretty crazy stuff, considering that the Swarmlord costs 220 points, the Avatar's 270, and the Swarmlord with his command abilities can provide far more value to the rest of the army, I think, by allowing units to get some powerful rerolls. I guess this particular matchup is a pretty good chance for the Swarmlord to shine though. The blade parry defensive rule is great in combat, but obviously useless at range, whereas the Avatar's half damage thing tends to be pretty equally effective both at range and in melee. Still though, victory for the Bugs here. The Swarmlord has managed to cast down the Avatar of Cain. So that brings us on to our final then. If both of these guys beat the Avatar, who's going to win in a straight fight? And if we wait for points, is that going to make a difference? First up, the Swarmlord is going to be able to deal better damage in multiple phases than the Avatar. It can smite for around about 1.7 wounds. It's slightly lower than average, just due to the Nightbringer's 3 wound cap, limiting the upper limits of the Super Smite. For the next psychic power though, I do feel that the Swarmlord is kind of in a bad place. He's got multiple different options. He could Psychic Scream for yet more mortal wounds, but still you have a fairly decent chance of not reaching that full 3 cap if you get unlucky with the casting. So when you're already averaging 1.7 with Smite, you might not really be adding all that much. Then you've got Catalyst, which is great protection against the Nightbringer's mortal wounds, but won't do anything against its Scythe, as that's got the special rule for ignoring things that ignore wounds. Or you could make the Nightbringer -1 to wound in combat, which is some decently powerful melee defense, but at the same time it's really quite hard to cast, and with the chance of it failing, it shakes out to about the same as the other two. It seems that no matter which way you go from his other psychic power, it seems that all of these work out to be about a 10% swing, so we're just going to go with Catalyst to keep it simple. In melee, he's even more likely to reach that big 3 wounds than the Avatar is. He gets 9 attacks and they're all flat 3 damage. If the Nightbringer gets lucky and makes some crazy saves, there's around about a 2% chance of failure, so he deals around about 2.9 wounds from this on average. In total, he does do slightly better than the Avatar, dealing out 4.6 wounds out of 9, slightly above 50%. When the Nightbringer hits back though, that does appear to be when the good news ends. Catalyst does blunt the damage for his Catan powers, Gaze only doing 2.3 wounds and Meteor about 1.7, but the melee is really where the Nightbringer makes his presence felt. Catalyst gets ignored and averages 13.3 wounds out of 13, around about 102% damage. It appears that the Nightbringer wins again beating the Swarmlord out on points as well. He costs a lot more, but not quite twice as much. So overall, both of these guys look like absolute titans of melee. 2 more choices that actually beat the Avatar on a per points basis. With all the other faction commanders, we only had Mortarion who managed that. The Nightbringer is basically made to kill characters, and the Swarmlord is very hard to kill in melee with that blade parry special rule, and the Avatar really doesn't get on too well with mortal wounds from psychic powers. In the final fight, the Nightbringer really does reign supreme. Only taking 3 wounds is really hard to overcome for characters, and ignoring invuls and any special rules to stop damage really do give it the edge. I guess in theory the Swarmlord might be able to eke out a few more small advantages, maybe using a High Fleet adaptation or synaptic imperatives that were in play. The Nightbringer isn't really going to be able to get many buffs besides a command reroll or 2, but I still think that's very unlikely to sway the result, particularly while that Necrodermis is in effect. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed a few more fun character fights. Let me know what you think of these down in the comments below. Did they go as you were expecting? And did you think that the Nightbringer will be handing it out to these two quite as easily as it did? If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where we'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention the Auspex Tactics Patreon page, which you can find down in the video description. The Patreon page is what allows me to keep on making videos like this quite as regularly. If you are enjoying a lot, any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaway with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.